There are heroes who wear no medals, there are battles never recorded in textbooks, and there are soldiers who carry a story their entire lives, yet never speak of it. Today, we journey back through memory, to one of the darkest chapters of the 20th century, the Vietnam War, to hear the quiet, powerful story of an American soldier, a man who didn't fire a gun, yet touched the hearts of hundreds of men. They called him the Silent Mailman. His name was James Walker, born in 1947 in the small town of Chillicothe, Ohio. The only child of a working-class family, he grew up to the sound of train whistles and church bells ringing every Sunday afternoon. James was always quiet. He wasn't the top of his class, nor the star athlete, but everyone remembered him, for his gentle smile and the way his eyes always looked down, as if apologizing to the world. In 1967, as the war in Vietnam escalated, James was drafted. He didn't volunteer like some of his friends, but he didn't try to run either. In a letter to his mother, he wrote, "I don't know if what I'm doing is right. But I know this, if I can deliver someone's letter, so they don't feel forgotten, then that's what I'll do." If you've ever thought of letters as just pieces of paper, in war, they are lifelines. A letter from a wife, a child, or an aging parent might be the only thing keeping a soldier going. Some carried them in their chest pockets, rereading them until they were worn thin. Others received a letter and were killed in action just hours later. James saw it all. He wasn't just a mailman, he became part of those letters. He remembered the bright eyes of soldiers when mail arrived. He remembered the tears when someone learned no one was writing back. He remembered the trembling hands gripping an envelope, as if holding the last thread that tied them to home. One time, delivering letters to Platoon 3 in Tay Ninh province, he met John Spencer, a 24-year-old soldier from Texas. James handed him a small envelope. It wasn't special, except for a faint scent of perfume still lingering. John read the letter, then collapsed into his pack, sobbing. A few minutes later, he turned to James and whispered, "I'm a dad. My wife had a son. His name is Jake." "Thank you, James. If I hadn't gotten this letter, I don't know how I would have kept going." James said nothing. He simply nodded. There were no congratulations. No words needed. He understood. Some joys are too big for language. To James, the war wasn't about winning or losing, it was about enduring, surviving the absurd, and his job, carrying mail, sounded simple, but every trip was a brush with death. Once, he got lost in the jungle near Loch Ninh. For nearly 20 hours, no one could reach him. All he had left were 2 cans of meat and a pocket knife. When they finally found him, James was clutching the mail bag, soaked in water and blood from a wound in his leg, but not a single letter was missing. When asked why he didn't drop the bag to move faster, he said, "If I died, at least they would still have hope." The war ended for James in late 1969 when he was rotated back to the U.S. There were no medals waiting, no newspaper articles, but in the hearts of those who'd received a letter from his hands, James became a symbol of belief. In a rare interview in 2005, at the age of 58, James shared, "I never opened a single letter, but I knew, inside, were whispers from someone's heart, and if there's one thing I hope to take to the grave, it's the feeling that no one I met felt forgotten." Years later, retired and living alone in a small wooden house in Ohio, James kept an old tin box. Inside were relics from the war, a torn map, a faded dog tag, and the last letter John Spencer ever received. What James didn't know was that one day, someone would knock on his door, someone with the name Spencer, someone named Jake, and that reunion, nearly 50 years later, would breathe new life into a story that time had almost buried. Rain falls over the Vietnamese jungle. James wipes mud from a plastic-wrapped letter. Gunfire in the distance. Some say letters couldn't stop a bullet, but James believed they could save a soul. Every letter he carried wasn't just paper, it was hope smuggled into hell, and every name he wrote down was a vow to deliver, even when the trails were mined. Even when he had to crawl, James crouching behind a tree as mortars rained down. He presses a bundle of letters against his chest. He wasn't dodging bullets for glory, he was doing it, so someone's son could know that his baby sister had taken her first steps, so a dying man could whisper goodbye, even if only on a page, a burned corner of a letter. James stitching it back with tape, The war ate everything, but not the words. James refused to let the words die. James staring at a destroyed outpost. Smoke still rising. When it was over, the war had taken more than bodies, it had taken language. Some men returned unable to speak. Others never spoke again, and James, he came back not with medals or photographs, but with a metal box full of unsent letters. James sitting alone in a quiet room in Ohio, 1975. He opens the box, 14 envelopes, all addressed. All waiting. Some were love letters, some apologies, some were confessions. James knocking on doors, decades later. Finding widows. Children. Neighbors who remembered. He didn't stop delivering, not even after peace came, because some wars don't end when the shooting stops. 1980s suburban Ohio. James working quietly in a post office. Colleagues barely notice him. James chose a job where silence was normal. He sorted mail, walked the same route, never spoke much, but at night, he wrote letters for soldiers who couldn't write anymore. He kept the promise. Veterans Hospital. James reading a letter aloud to a dying man with no family. Dear Eddie, if you're hearing this, you made it through the night, and if you didn't, know that someone remembers you. No audience, no camera, just one man. And a letter, a drawer in his bedroom filled with returned letters, tied with a blue ribbon. Not all letters reached their destinations, but James kept every one, because someone had to remember. 2019 Veterans Gathering. Old men with medals. Some in wheelchairs. James walks in slowly. Someone shouted, "Walker." Heads turned, then silence, then applause, not loud, but long. A veteran hugs him. Tears roll down. Another hands him a crumpled letter, preserved in a plastic sheet. I kept this. Your handwriting saved me. I was gonna end it that night. Then I read what my sister wrote. James looked at him, eyes filled but steady. It wasn't my handwriting. It was her love. I just delivered it. 50 years, 4 wars later, and still, the mailman came. James is home. An old typewriter. One last letter half-typed. James died quietly in the winter of 2024, no trumpet. No parade. In his will, he asked for one thing, no coffin. Just a bench under a tree. Leave a pen there, if you can. Jake, son of James's wartime friend, reading the final letter aloud. Dear friend, if this finds you, I hope you are still writing, because words outlive war. And they carry peace where bullets cannot. Small park in Ohio. A wooden bench under a maple tree. A pen rests on top. A stranger walks by, sits, and writes something. No medals. No flag, just letters, and a man who believed that in the worst of humanity, a single page could hold enough light to save someone. James Walker, the silent mailman, 1939 to 2024, he didn't fight with guns. He fought with letters. Amid the thunder of war, James Walker, a soldier who carried no weapon, chose to protect humanity with letters. He didn't kill. But he saved many, with ink instead of bullets, with words from home, with the unwavering belief that, even in the depths of hell, one line of love could bring a man back from the edge. He had no statue, no shining medals to his name. What he left behind was a tin box filled with memories, and a promise that never faded. What remains unfinished, perhaps his deepest regret, was that not every letter made it home. That some goodbyes were never heard, but one thing is certain, he lived. His mission to the very end, not as a warrior of war, but as a guardian of final words. If you're still here, thank you. You've just heard a story not only about war, but about compassion. This isn't just a tale of the past, but a gentle reminder that, in any era, a small act, a written line, a human heart, can become the most powerful form of salvation.